Hi everybody and welcome to today's webinar, our Sport Learn Introduction to Crowdfunding webinar. I'm just giving a few minutes just to see if we can have a few more people come through to the live room. Numbers are going up, so we'll just hang on a few seconds and see if we can get some more coming in. I'm sure we'll have some join us later on as well. So today we're going to be looking at crowdfunding, what it is, how to do that successfully for your sports organisation. We'll also hear from Nadine from Sport England. She'll be talking through the extra funding money that's available for your sports organisation when you're crowdfunding. So we've got some brilliant funds on offer that you can apply for as part of the crowdfunding process. We've also been joined by Guy as well from the Bristol Co-operative gym. So he's going to tell us all about his amazing crowdfunder, which has closed recently, what he found kind of easy, what he found difficult about his experience, and hopefully that will help to inspire you guys to start your crowdfunding journeys. We have allowed 45 minutes for this session. That does include a Q&A at the end as well. So some of you have found the chat box there on the right hand of your screen. Do feel free to add any questions into there. We'll get through as many as we can at the end of the session. Hopefully some of them will be answered as we go through the slides anyway, but we will get round to as many as we can before we close the session. Just a few housekeeping points before we get started. Some of us are still working from home, so you may hear some unexpected interruptions. Please do bear with us. You might find as well, if you have any issues with your internet connection, if the screen freezes, for example, please just do press the refresh button in your browser and you should come straight back into the live room. Quite often we get asked if we can see you. No, we can't see you. You can obviously see us, but we can't see you guys there at home or at work. So do feel free to sit there with your lunch or your cup of tea. You won't be recorded at all. The session itself is recorded and we will send it through with a follow-up email with all of the links to the resources that we talked through today. So you'll be able to replay that at your leisure. So without further ado, as we've started a little bit later than planned, let's get started and welcome Nadine, please. Hi Nadine, how are you?
Hi Zoe, I'm good, thank you.
Good. So you're here to talk to us about the 2 funding pots from Sport England that are available through crowdfunding, aren't you?
Yes.
So if you could please start by talking us through the Active Together Fund.
Perfect, thanks Zoe. And hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. Hopefully you pick up some tips about running a successful crowdfunder campaign and how to access our 2 available funds. So the first fund we have available is our Active Together Fund, which is a 7.5 million lottery fund. We launched this back in May 2020 to support clubs and organisations through the pandemic. And the main focus of the fund is recovery, reinvention and building resilience. So typical campaigns could cover the emerging energy crisis, general needs and essential maintenance works, or increased activity demand following the pandemic. With this fund, it's been really effective to date. We've supported over 550 successful campaigns and there's plenty of budget left. So we're looking to support even more clubs and organisations. Our second fund is our Places and Spaces Fund. Now this is a capital fund and it's aimed at clubs and organisations who are looking to create, develop or enhance their facilities to encourage their local community to be active as part of the upcoming Commonwealth Games. Both of our funds are available nationwide and with match funding up to 50%, up to a maximum value of £10,000. We appreciate for many people that this is your first time crowdfunding, so there's plenty of resources and wraparound support, so do take advantage of that.
Definitely.
Yeah. I hope you enjoy the session and I'll hand over to Zoe who'll discuss things in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Nadine. And hopefully we'll hear from you a little bit later with the Q&A session if you'd like to come back and join us.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. So as Nadine mentioned there, 2 pots of money available. There's actually £10,000 available for, up to £10,000 available for projects towards their targets. And that would be the equivalent of up to kind of 50% towards their target as well. There are a few milestones that you would need to hit in order to secure these pledges. So once you've been approved for this extra funding, You would then start your crowdfunder. So you'd launch your crowdfunding journey. Your page would go live. You would need to hit 25% of your initial target, and that would be from a group of unique supporters, as you can see in this table here. So it will be dependent on what your initial target is as to how many unique supporters or required supporters you would need to have donating or pledging to your page. When we talk about unique supporters, we're talking about people with their own individual banking footprints. So for example, if you have a couple with a shared bank account, a joint bank account, and they both donate to your page, that would actually count as one unique supporter because their banking footprint is the same. So they need to have an individual banking footprint as well as an individual email address. So bear that in mind when you're looking to rally up those supporter numbers. Once you've hit that initial 25% of your target with the required supporter numbers, that pledge from Sport England will be added to your page. It will show towards your targets in your percentage raised, and they will also become one of your supporters. So they'll be listed in the supporter tab of your page. You would then carry on crowdfunding. You need to hit 100% of your target in order to secure that funding from Sport England. So once you've hit your target, all the money raised, including that extra funding pledge, is secure and it's yours to keep at the close of your crowdfunder. If you still have time left of your live campaign, you can keep raising funds towards something that we call a stretch target. So we always recommend that people set a realistic target, something which is the minimum they need to make their project happen, and then plan to overfund. So have a stretch target in place, which is something that you aim for once you've smashed that initial target and secured all of that extra funding as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to look at how crowdfunding itself works for clubs and for sports organisations. So I'm going to play you a little video for you guys to have a little watch through, and that will be all of the kind of basics of crowdfunding.
Hello everyone. So how does crowdfunding work and what is it? Well, crowdfunding is a great way to raise money and awareness for your organisation by engaging with your community. What you're going to do is create a crowdfunding page on our online platform. And don't worry if you're not too tech savvy, it's very easy to use, very user friendly. You're going to create a page that looks something like this one on the right hand side. And then you're going to promote that campaign to your crowd and your community, and they'll then make pledges and donations on your page, and that's how you get funded. So it's really important to make an engaging page. It needs to target the whole community. So try not to fall into that trap of just writing something that's geared towards your club members, because they're most likely going to be engaging with you already. So you really want to reaching out to the wider audience, potentially people who aren't already connected to your sport or your club, and really make the most of crowdfunding and create that awareness of your organisation. So when you're creating your page, what we always recommend is start with some key headlines and organise the content into a very readable order. So if you start with the headline of who you are and outline who you are as a club, your impact in the community, and why you're crowdfunding. So for a lot of you, it will still be the effects of that COVID has had on your organisation, but equally some people are now starting to get over that, and it may be a completely different type of project. So it's important that you just explain what you're actually crowdfunding for, and also how you plan to spend the money. So as a potential supporter, you would be much more likely to pledge or donate to a campaign if you can see the direct impact that your financial contribution will make. Once you have all that information collated, it's time to make your page just look more engaging, more appealing. And the best way to do that is with images and videos. So you can add images in between to the page, in between the text, to break up those blocks of text that you should have, and it also helps to summarise and reflect the key elements of your campaign and show the personality of your club. So what also helps with that, as well as images, is a short video. So 1 to 2 minutes is absolutely plenty. You just want to grab the audience's attention and tell them in a nutshell what your project is all about. And it gives that opportunity to actually connect and engage with the viewers of your page. So it's really important to make sure that you're happy with your page before you go live, but also before applying for the extra funding. So whenever you apply for your extra funding, which you'll do via your project dashboard, the relevant sports organisation will review your page and give you some feedback potentially, and just make sure your page has got everything on it that it needs to be a successful campaign, and before deciding whether to give you a pledge for extra funding or not. Now, Crowdfunder is the UK's top rewards-based crowdfunding platform, as opposed to just purely donations only. So, and really, it's on top of the standard donation that you'd perhaps obviously associate with traditional fundraising. You add these rewards to take your campaign to the next level. So rewards tend to encourage larger and more pledges and enable you to attract pledges from outside your network. So you want to get really inventive and creative with your rewards as much as you can. So try to offer a range of rewards targeted at different audiences. So your members might be tempted by, say, a one-to-one coaching session, or you could offer sponsorship or advertising space to large donors. And then you want to think about those in the wider community who don't necessarily have a connection with your club already, but you want to think about how you can get them to pledge. So what you can do is speak with local businesses who may want to support your campaign. Rather than a financial contribution, or in some cases as well as, they can offer products or services to use as rewards. And offering these at a slight discount means that anyone in the area will be keen to make a pledge to grab themselves a bargain, an exclusive offer. So on the page here, you can see we've got some great examples of rewards that we've seen, such as on the right-hand side there, we've got 2 hours of conversational Greek lessons. In the middle at the bottom, we've got a fish and chips voucher. And then up at the top left, we've got Power Auto's MOT voucher. So you can see there's a bit of things that are totally unrelated to sport, but that is making it appealing much to a much wider audience. Now, another great thing that you can do with a sports crowdfunding campaign is to use our multiplier feature. It's really effective for sports clubs. It allows people to essentially fundraise on behalf of your project. So perhaps you might have some individuals that want to do something special to raise funds for the club, like a sponsored swim or run a marathon. Or perhaps you have different teams or squads within your club who fancy a bit of competition to see who can raise the most, or cycle the furthest, or run the furthest. It's a great way to get more people involved in promoting the campaign and tapping into their personal networks, so reaching an even wider audience, and it can add a great competitive element to a campaign too. So you can see this example on the screen now was run by Spencer Lacrosse Club in 2021, and they had 44 fundraisers, so 44 individuals, each with their own fundraising page, and all the money that they raise via there feeds into the main project page. So it's a really great way to get people truly engaged with your fundraising efforts. So crowdfunding works and sports go really hand in hand very well. Sports crowdfund really well. So you can see here there's a selection of different types of projects, and that's just a very small handful. So they range from speed skating to swimming to gymnastics. Sports clubs are often at the heart of the community, and by definition you have a group of potentially competitive people who directly benefit from the project. So whatever sport it might be, it crowdfunds really well, and you really want to have that common goal in mind, and all crowdfund together. One of the next steps you can take, the most important steps, is to use our online learning facility. So we've got a free online course specifically geared for crowdfunding sports clubs, and that will give you even more detail about behind the basics that I've just gone over now, telling you how to create the perfect page. There's lots of tips on how to actually run your crowdfunder and pull it together. So definitely go on and do that online learning course after this webinar, and then go on to help create your perfect page and apply for the funding. So best of luck to you all.
Hi guys, well hopefully that gave you some really good food for thought about what is involved in the crowdfunding process. As my colleague mentioned there, it does work really well for sports clubs. You already have a captive audience, you already have people who are competitive that are rallying around you, and normally you're really embedded in the community as well. So we often see that sports clubs really crowdfund successfully. My colleague also touched upon the multiplier aspect of crowdfunding, which again works really well for sports. Once you've set up your crowdfunding page, you can actually select to become a multiplier, which allows your club members of the community to fundraise on your behalf. We've actually just teamed up with, this is brand new news as well that we were informed about yesterday. So we've partnered now with Strava as well. Many of you will use Strava, the app, to actually track your runs or your sporting activity. You can now actually link that directly to your fundraising pages. It works really well to enable that competitive element. You might want to challenge your fundraisers to run a certain distance within the month or do a set amount of steps, for example. This will actually now show on their fundraising pages. So it creates really great momentum and keeps that competitive element going. It makes those pages really engaging as well. So it works really well for running-based fundraisers. Strava goes hand in hand with running, as I'm sure you were all aware, but we've also enabled lots of other sports as well. So things like, sponsored walks, cycling, swimming, rowing even. So this is a brand new feature that I highly recommend that all of you take advantage of and add onto those fundraisers. Okay, what we always find is it's a really good thing to hear from people who have been there and done that and get some inspiration from them. So I'd really like to invite onto the screen Guy, please, who crowdfunded on behalf of the Bristol Co-operative gym and for the project A Home for the UK's only member-owned gym. So you guys did incredibly well, didn't you, Guy? You successfully raised 27,500, really, just shy of, in 42 days from 236 supporters, which is massive numbers. Could you tell us a little bit about your project, please?
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm from Bristol Co-operative Gym. We are the only, as far as we know, the only member-run gym. And we have a cooperative structure, which means that people can come and train and use the facility, but then if they kind of like what we're doing, which is trying to provide weightlifting and things in a sort of different environment to what you might find in most gyms, then they can choose to become a member of the cooperative and help to run the space. So that work is done voluntarily. And one thing that we'd always dreamed of since we set up in 2016, and we were using community spaces, and we'd always dreamed of having our own space, because most of the people who use the gym don't feel, our gym, don't feel particularly comfortable in the kind of conventional gym environment. And there's lots of data supporting that about, the number of people who sign up for gym memberships and don't use them. And when you look at the reasons for that, there's a load of stuff to do with the design of that environment. So the idea, the kind of dream that we had was to be able to design our own gym environment collaboratively together from our cooperative. But with the kind of, we also try and do everything in a very affordable way. So we don't have this big chunk of money that we could throw at something like that. And that was why we started looking at other opportunities for kind of funding that big move, which would really help us to reach more people, to kind of practice what we preach almost, and we were looking at various different options, and crowdfunding seemed like a really good opportunity for us.
Amazing. You just completely smashed my next question, which was why did you decide to crowdfund? But it sounds like you kind of did your research, weighed up the pros and cons of each of those. Would you say that the extra funding offer was something that kind of drew you towards the crowdfunding as well? Because you were actually supported not only by Sport England, but from Power to Change as well, which is brilliant. So you've had 2 pots of extra funding towards your project. Were you aware of that being a possibility before launching?
We were, yeah. I mean, I think that a big factor that influenced the decision to go with crowdfunding is one of the kind of principles of being a cooperative is to stay sort of autonomous and independent. So there's other options, you know, for us to like look for investment, you know, or to look at like external funding. And you know, we're not a charity, so there's kind of like we're registered as a cooperative society, so we sort of sit in a strange place with that stuff. But you know, some funding is available to us. But so the idea with the crowdfunder of being able to kind of like basically just turn to your community and say, this is what we're trying to do. Like, you can kind of take like, and also kind of use it as an opportunity to bring more people into the cooperative as well, right? And kind of like have that sort of ownership of this thing, still be autonomous, still be independent, was really appealing. But then also knowing that it was possible to pair that with these kind of larger contributions potentially through the match funding from, yeah, as you say, Sport England and Power to Change, was like amazing.
The icing on the cake, isn't it? Yeah. Really, it's just that lovely. That's why we kind of call it extra funding, because the whole idea is that you are, you know, you're going through the process of crowdfunding, and as you say, you're raising those funds from your community, and you're developing advocates and supporters all the way, and then it's just that lovely kind of icing on the cake, isn't it, to potentially secure this extra funds too. Did you find anything difficult at all about the process?
Yes.
Oh. Oh no, you better go. No, it's amazing, really easy.
No, it's totally amazing. You know, the setup, like the kind of the resources that are available, the support that's available is all really, really good.
Okay.
But running the campaign, yeah. But actually doing the work is hard. I mean, like, and it's stressful. Like, you know, when you're actually in the campaign, the urge to check it every minute is unbelievable. So you're kind of constantly on edge until you feel that you've got the right sort of momentum. But then also there are this, you know, you sort of expect, you've got this initial surge of contributions, and then it sort of dips off, and that's really unnerving. Even though everyone tells you, oh, it's normal, don't worry, you know, la la la, but you're kind of freaking out a little bit. So but things that helped with that were like asking people who'd done it. So we, you know, we're in Bristol. There are other cooperatives who'd run crowdfunders fairly recently. So there's Bristol Bike Project did a really nice crowdfund, and I know the person who kind of coordinated that. So I was talking to her a lot. Getting advice from Nadine was invaluable about like the kind of tone of the messaging and the page, and then we actually had some funding to, when we were looking for the venue that we are now renovating, we used some of the funding that we had towards that to work with someone who was an expert in sort of digital marketing stuff. So we had a contribution towards that from them, which was really helpful. We did a workshop that was run by Stir to Action. That's the name of the magazine. I can't remember. No, maybe they're called Stir to Action. Anyway, that was really good. And then also, yeah, just all the kind of help that's available through Crowdfunder as well. And I think like not feeling that we had to kind of invent it all from first principles. It's like there is a kind of process. Yeah,
there is. And I think one of the things that we always advise as a really good place to start is, as you say, making use of all of the resources. So like the Learn platform and the Knowledge Hub, which I'll share links to not only in the chat box, but in the follow-up email, everyone will have all of those resources sent directly to them. But just looking at other projects, if you're thinking you might be eligible for some extra funding, for example, from Sport England, have a look at their funding page on our website, and then you'll see all of the projects that have been supported at the bottom of that page. You'll get inspiration for kind of page layouts, rewards. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can search for any project with keywords or location on the website and see what's come before you and what resonates with you as a reader. I think is a really good place to start. And you're right, it is a lot of work. We do recommend, if you can, get a team of people around you. Anticipate that lull, like you've mentioned, and everybody does say, you know, it will be exciting at the beginning, it will dip into the bottom of a U, and then it will come back up. So it kind of lulls, doesn't it? It comes back up towards the end. And the key thing is trying to combat that dip if you can, keep that momentum going, which is again why we at Crowdfunder recommend not running a really long campaign, because that can just increase that lull. 4 to 5 weeks is optimum really, because it's quite tiring, isn't it? And it takes a lot of your energy, and same for your supporters. It can be quite draining for them if they're kind of bombarded by this message for a long period of time. They'll tune out from it. So yeah, short, sharp, and kind of lots of momentum is perfect for crowdfunding. What did you find worked best for you guys? Was there something that you just kind of thought, right, we found our rhythm now, this is definitely, we're on the right track? Whether that was promotion or getting somebody involved, but like you say, with the digital kind of marketing side of things, or what was kind of your best highlight?
I think that the fact that we'd been going since 2016 meant that we had this base of people who were interested in and supportive of our, intention. And so having the crowdfunder served as almost a focal point for that energy. And so it was a chance to kind of take something that to some extent had just existed as a shared idea, this idea, because the gym, when we were just basically, we had this cupboard with all our kit in, and we just get the stuff out, and then the gym would exist, and then at the end of the session we put it away again, and the gym stops existing. So it's just kind of an idea that everyone was into, and then this really served as a sort of catalyst and this kind of focus that meant that it really brought the cooperative together, gathered our community around us, and then we were able to sort of draw from everyone's different skills within that community. So for us, and this, I think maybe you were going to ask me about this later as well, but the rewards stuff was incredible, because we then had this opportunity to reach out to other businesses in the city and say, oh, hey, we're doing this thing. Would you be up for, supporting us in some way? And people were so kind and generous. And they were the most successful rewards, were opportunities to do things in other places in the city that kind of, it's all trying to work with people where we have similar values, and we're sort of all kind of pointing in the same direction. But you're kind of it's almost like over the years we'd kind of built up this reserve of goodwill or something, and then it was kind of giving people a chance to do something with that. That was amazing. It was really powerful, and yeah, so that in a kind of vague sense, that was amazing. And then I guess more practically, having a good video and good photos, those kind of immediate things that people would get from going on the page was really good. We actually got some help from someone who specializes in sort of design to kind of lay out the page and how to use the graphics and all this sort of thing. I think that was really good. Things that didn't work, if that's worth talking about.
It is, yeah. All information is useful, isn't it? So yeah, absolutely.
So for us, cold emailing so we'd thought that this campaign could be an opportunity for us to connect with other gyms doing kind of inclusive fitness stuff around the world, and be and it served really well as a kind of marketing campaign, and it got our word out, and it's built these connections in a really nice way, but that didn't bring in donations for us. So that was interesting, because that was also that's a real time drain, was sending out all of those things. So as far as the kind of the sort of time investment, that didn't really pay it back that much. And also the most popular rewards were those kind of experiences that other things that weren't gym related, and just stuff like merch. The things that were less successful for us were online workshops, gym classes, stuff that we kind of already offered. We find that quite a lot, that actually it'll either be that you're offering some of your services at a slight discount, and people are like, well, we would be going to that gym session anyway, we're going to save a bit of money, that's brilliant. But it's the experiential stuff and the events that are kind of things that are a little bit outside of your day-to-day running, that people feel like they're actually doing something that makes them feel a bit special and unique. So if the people attending today can think about things that are maybe slightly out of the box, maybe you want to hold an event at your club that you wouldn't normally do, and you're inviting people to buy a ticket to it, for example, as a reward. Or like you said, getting out there and speaking to your community, it can be quite surprising and really kind of validating to have people really want to get behind you.
it's really important, and you'll be able to realize just how embedded in that community you are. And I think all of that awareness and building that buzz around you guys, you know, as a gym as well as the crowdfunder is really important going forward, isn't it? Centralizing all of that information as well on a crowdfunder can be really useful going forward. So, you know, for anybody that launches and runs a crowdfunder, when you're posting updates to your page, when you've got brilliant comments of support from those around you, going forward, that can be really great for approaching funders, you know, grant funders, or just having that lovely centralized kind of promotion that's all already there for you. So don't think of it as just a kind of one-time only thing. It can serve you really well in the future as well, as part of your portfolio of achievements, really, as a club. I'm conscious a little bit of time, so I'm just going to have a little check through. You've covered rewards beautifully, which is amazing. You have touched upon it a little bit, but other than financial, did you find that the crowdfunding campaign has brought other benefits to the gym and to the organisation?
Yeah, massively. I think that what you were just saying there is really resonant for me, like that it's not just this kind of discrete little campaign, but that, you know, that it can have this legacy effect as well of like the network remains, like the kind of increase in, like for us, it was the biggest like marketing campaign that we'd ever done as well. And obviously that, you know, the kind of I think we went, I mean, it's still not huge numbers, but I think at the start of the campaign, we had like 600 followers on Instagram or something. By the end, we had 900 or something like this. And it's kind of like, that's always growing. Like, and it was a chance to gather a lot of like, yeah, like photo and video materials that you can keep using afterwards, to reach out to those other gyms and kind of build that network in the city and beyond. It was a real kind of bonding experience for the cooperative and for our community. And sort of a chance to prove it, you know, or prove the kind of value of what you do and like, yeah, like you're saying, like the place that you occupy in your community, you know, and just kind of give that a kind of make it real in a way. Yeah.
Oh, it's so lovely to hear. This is why we like having project owners come and talk to us, because it makes it real for people. You know, you can see people's pages and the numbers and the figures that are raised, but actually understanding all of those added benefits, like you say, you know, the marketing campaign really, and the awareness and all of those things that are part and parcel of crowdfunding, because it can be quite an intense you know, period of time, and it can take up quite a bit of energy, but I think the payoff can be massive if people decide to go ahead with it. What would you say would be a really good kind of takeaway piece of advice for those that are attending today that may be thinking about starting to crowdfund?
It's kind of like maybe not. It might be really unhelpful to hear, but like for us, it definitely was beneficial, the fact that we'd been around for a few years before we did it, like because we had that existing place in our community, and we had that sort of reputation, and you know, people knew us, I suppose. Then we were able to sort of draw on that. That was really valuable for us, and to sort of like almost piggyback on your existing success, like all your sort of, you know, the other things that you've done, and this is like another kind of springboard into a new phase of success, you know. The other thing is, yeah, asking for advice, like from people who've done it, and like, you know, and really, I guess, like asking very detailed and specific questions, and I suppose also just really weighting the time that you spend on the thing towards the like prep phase, because it's like prep is everything really, and then once the thing gets going, then you're just rolling out stuff that you've already planned.
Absolutely. You know? We recommend, you know, spending the kind of same amount of time planning your crowdfunder as the live period. So if you're planning to run a 4 to 5 week campaign, really you want to put that amount of time in again into the planning. You want to be able to have all of those, you know, images and social posts and all those ideas queued up ahead of time, you know, and securing those initial pledges and maybe reaching out to press and blogs. All those things need to be done in advance, ideally. And especially when it comes to applying for that extra funding, in an ideal scenario, you've already been approved for funding before you go live, and then you've already got content to go out to your supporters and say, you know, if you help us hit these milestones, this is what we're going to be able to receive from Sport England, for example. So you're completely right. Planning is kind of everything. And then you can be reactive by using tools like the live dashboard, which you guys probably were aware of, where you can see everything that's happening with activity on your page, what rewards are selling and things like that. So you can be reactive, but without kind of it being a knee-jerk reaction, it being something that you can draw from those things that you've already got in place and just kind of build upon them. That's really great advice. I've just been sharing a few links into the chat box while you've been speaking there. You mentioned about, you know, getting the advice and the resources and things. So your people will see that there are links to the Help Centre and the Knowledge Hub, which are amazing tools. They've got loads of useful guides and articles for every stage of crowdfunding. And then a link as well to our drop-ins and webinars. So the same way that you guys booked onto today's webinar, you'll see that there's weekly drop-ins as well that you can book through Eventbrite. And that's actually, it's an online session, but it's a face-to-face kind of, it's a human, it's me, essentially. You can come and talk to me each week and have your questions about crowdfunding and specific questions answered as well. Speaking of questions, thank you so much for that, Guy. That was really informative and really inspirational. I think now it'd be great to bring Nadine back as well and see if we can get through some of these questions that have come through while we've been talking. Hiya. Okay, I've been having a little look. So we've got a few that have come through. So first of all, this is from Andy, just asking if there's any extra funding available in Scotland. Yes, there is. There isn't any sport-specific funding, is there, Nadine, at the moment? But we do have some extra funding partners in Scotland currently. If you have a look on that extra funding link that I've put into the chat box and will be in the follow-up email, we work with over 70 partners, both regionally and nationally. So the chances are there are, you know, some extra funding pots of money potentially available to yourself. Just have a look at that page when you get a chance. A question from Denise. Does multiplier donations count as one individual, or can we count each of their donations? So multipliers, essentially all of the unique supporters that are associated with that multiplier become part of your overall supporters. So if you have a fundraiser with 50 supporters on it, that all of those 50 will be transferred onto your page. So with multipliers, you have your project page, which we call the parent page, and then all of your additional fundraisers we call the child pages. All of the totals, so the money raised and the supporter numbers from a child page, will be reflected on the parent page. So will be reflected on your campaign page as well. So it's a great way to drive up not only the money raised towards your target, but those supporter numbers. As long as they're unique on the fundraiser, they'll come through onto your page. We've got another question here. If you don't hit your target, what happens to the other pledges and donations we received? So there's two different ways that you can set up a crowdfunder. One is if you select to be all or nothing. Sounds really scary, but it does work really well if you have, for example, a piece of equipment, or you know your project will cost, let's say, £5,000, and anything less than that isn't going to cut it. You're not going to be able to make that project happen. You might select all or nothing. It creates a great sense of urgency as well for your supporters to make sure you cross that line of your target. If you don't hit your target when you're all or nothing, everything will be refunded to your supporters. So it really does give you a good kind of catalyst and a good kind of push with that motivation to keep the momentum going. Great sense of urgency. If you are keep what you raise, which is a slightly different setup where actually you can make use of any money raised, then you can set up to keep, as I say, you keep what you raise. It's called flexible funding, essentially. The only thing with that is if you have been approved for extra funding and you don't hit your 100% of your target, most of our funders require you to do so. Therefore, the extra funding would be returned to our funding partner, but you would keep all of the money you've raised from your crowd. So it's something to weigh up when you're setting up your crowdfunder. Go through the planning, have a look at the Learn platform, work out what is a realistic target for yourselves and see which of those two kind of camps you would want to fall into. But essentially with extra funding, unless it's stipulated in the T's and C's, it would be refunded to the funding partner if you don't hit 100% of your target in either of those scenarios. Okay, a question in from Daniel. Are there examples of successful pages, especially that your guest speaker's given, that has had a specialist support? So Guy, as you mentioned earlier, you kind of took it upon yourselves, didn't you, to kind of reach out and actually bring some people on board. You can look for successful projects on our platform. It's very difficult to know, obviously, just by looking at the project, whether they've had any additional support outside of the resources provided by Crowdfunder. If you're in a position to do so, of course, you can bring people on board. We would recommend that if you're going to do that, then maybe you'd be looking at the marketing side of things, if that's something which is a bit alien to you. In terms of setting up the page, setting up the campaign and telling your story and things like that, you will probably find you can do that yourselves. Sourcing the rewards and things will be you guys. But if you feel like you need a bit of an extra hand in that, and you're prepared to maybe spend a bit of money on it, my advice would be to put that towards kind of marketing and promotion. Whether you guys would agree with that, Nadine and Guy?
Yeah, absolutely. And just more on that point, we can provide the links to our landing pages for active together in places and spaces, and you can see all the campaigns we have supported in the past for further inspiration as well.
Brilliant, thank you. This has come through from Sarah. We're a swimming club fundraising for diving blocks, hoping to set up multiple pages to encourage different squads to fund these against each other for blocks. Does this take away from our main site? Do people donate to both, or should I avoid this? That in essence is a perfect example of a multiplier. So you would set up your project page, you would explain exactly what you want to fundraise for, which would be the diving blocks. You'd explain who you are as a club and as an organization, make it really engaging, brilliant video, loads of visuals, and you'd select to become a multiplier. And then all of those fundraisers, all of those members of the squad would set up their own individual pages, and it would be kind of up to them. They would take accountability for those, promote it within their own networks. So people would donate to the fundraisers, and it would automatically be put straight onto your page as well as theirs. And obviously you could promote the main page as part of the club's kind of overall promotion. It would be up to the fundraisers really, ideally, to promote their own mini pages, their child pages. But yeah, perfect example of a multiplier right there. Okay, another one from Sarah. Can you talk more about multiplier funding, please? I hope I have covered that for you. But we will send some links through in the follow-up email so you can read a little bit more about that if you need to. Question from Daniel. Okay, speak a little bit more about match funding. So as I've just mentioned, we work with over 70 funders. We've got over £10 million worth of funding available nationwide and regionally. In terms of the places and spaces and the Active Together funds, my advice to you would be to have a look at our extra funding page, look at the localities, look at the ones which fit well with your idea, take a look through each individual page, the T's and C's, the eligibility criteria. It's all there for you. And then you've also got those projects that have been supported by those funds at the bottom of each page. That would be my kind of advice. There's so many to talk through, but I think in terms of the Sport England funds, unless you kind of have a specific question about either of those, I think just it would be a good idea to do a bit of research on the page itself. Unless you have anything to add, Nadine, about the two funds we've spoken about earlier.
I can just add on that, Zoe. In terms of our match funding, depending on where your club or organisation is based, if it's based in an area of high deprivation or low deprivation, we usually calculate our match funding based on the location of the club. But we provide more information on that when you apply. So if there's any questions, we can answer them.
Perfect. And you guys, you're really responsive, aren't you, with projects as well? So once they're kind of on your radar from putting in an application, Sport England, well, our sport funders in general are really brilliant at kind of opening up those conversations and sending through improvement guides if needed, aren't you? And just making sure that you're getting as many projects through that funnel and successful as possible. So the best advice really is, if you think you're eligible, put in that application, and it will open up those conversations with Sport England. Okay, this is from Sarah, can we get the QR code before we go live for advertising through rewards, donations, local paper and social media, etc.? You can do. It's there is actually a guide in our help centre as how to do that. So for those of you that aren't aware, as part of your live dashboard, you have lots of amazing kind of options to manage your crowdfunding campaign throughout the whole course of the live project. One of those is you have access to promotional tools. So you'll have a widget for your website and you'll also have a QR code that you can access from that dashboard once you've gone live. There is an option to do so before you go live, if you so wish, if you're getting any flyers and posters and things printed ahead of the live crowdfunder. So yes, absolutely, Sarah. If you head to the help centre, the link is in the chat box, and just type in QR code, you'll be able to see a guide on how to do that. Okay, and then another one through from Daniel. Can you include a recent event as a multiplier with sponsorship raised through Just Giving? So it's a tricky one. You couldn't necessarily do it retrospectively. Obviously, what you could do is set up multipliers on your page, and if you wanted to transfer that sponsorship money across, we're obviously not compatible with Just Giving. We're a platform in our own right, so it's a bit of a tricky one. If you can help it, I would try and keep those events going throughout the course of the live crowdfunder if you can. If not, you can always pay money onto your crowdfunders through your organisation if needs be. So if you've already done a fundraising event, the only thing to be mindful of with that is to just make sure that you do have kind of a trail of evidence as to where that money has come from. If you've already held a fundraising event and you want to be able to pop that onto your crowdfunder, make sure that you do put something as an update, make sure you put a comment and obviously have all of that evidenced, because it might be that one of our funding partners like Sport England would want to look into where kind of that money has come from, if it's coming from the club itself. So yes, and yes, you can. It would just need to be put onto a multiplier that's in existence if that's what you want to do. You can't really do it retrospectively, if that makes any sense. But you guys, Nadine, you're quite kind of open to kind of offline events being paid onto the crowdfunder, aren't you? It just needs to make sure that there's kind of a chain of evidence as to where that's come from.
Yeah, for current fundraisers, we wouldn't match fund against retrospective fundraisers, as you said, or fundraising on a different platform like Just Giving. So,
okay,
yeah,
perfect. Just double checking, we've gone through the questions. I'm just having a quick little look in the chat box just to make sure. Okay, yeah, this is from Alan. Is there a minimum amount of supporters that have to donate to qualify as a supporter? Oh, I see. So in terms of a financial contribution, £1 essentially. So people need to donate £1 or above. Obviously, if you're setting rewards, which is something which is a requirement for the extra funding from Sport England, you will be setting them at different price points to encourage them to be obviously donating or pledging at different price points. So we do find that most people donate kind of £5 and upwards, but ultimately it's £1. Okay. Brilliant. I think we've actually, unless anybody's got any last minute questions before we wrap it up, I think we've actually covered all of the ones in the chat box at the moment. Mel S has just said replay. I'm guessing whether that's do we have a replay? Yes, it will be part of the follow-up email. So along with all of those links that I've mentioned today that are in the chat box at the moment, you'll get a replay to today's session. Obviously, feel free to share that with team members and things as well. Learn platform is really key. I'll put that into the follow-up email. That will be your next step, really. If you can all go on and complete that Learn platform, it will really get you kind of crowdfunding confidently and being able to put that plan in place. Just got some thank yous coming through. So I think that, what time are we on? We've run over a tiny bit, but I think we've covered loads today, which is brilliant. So thank you so much, Guy and Nadine, for coming to join me today. Hopefully all of you attending have had some really good food for thought and are feeling confident to start your crowdfunding journey. And we wish you all the best of luck with it all. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care, everyone.
Bye.